smoky yellow bistros. Of these last, some so small that they were little more than diamond-shaped, enclosed corners holding bottles and a zinc-covered counter. Nothing here reminded me of home, though Giovanni reveled in it all. "I know a place," he told the driver, Trace Bon Marque, and told the driver where it was. It developed that it was one of the driver's favorite rendezvous. "Where is this place?" asked Jacques petulantly. "I thought we were going to," and he named another place. "You are joking," said Giovanni with contempt. "That place is very bad and very expensive. It is only for tourists. We are not tourists," and he added to me, "When I first came to Paris I worked in Les Halles a long time too. Nom de Dieu, quel boulot. I pray always never to do that again." And he regarded the streets through which we passed with a sadness which was not less real for being a little theatrical and self-mocking. Guillaume said, from his corner of the cab, "Tell him who rescued you." "Ah, yes," said Giovanni. "Behold my savior, my patron." He was silent a moment. Then, "You do not regret it, do you? I have not done you any harm? You are pleased with my work?" "Mais oui," said Guillaume. Giovanni sighed. "Bien sûr." He looked out of the window again whistling. We came to a corner remarkably clear. The taxi stopped. "ICI," said the driver. "ICI," Giovanni echoed. I reached for my wallet, but Giovanni sharply caught my hand, conveying to me with an angry flick of his eyelash the intelligence that the least these dirty old men could do was pay. He opened the door and stepped out into the street. Guillaume had not reached for his wallet and Jacques paid for the cab. "Ugh," said Guillaume, staring at the door of the cafe before which we stood. "I am sure this place is infested with vermin. Do you want to poison us?" "It's not the outside you're going to eat," said Giovanni. "You are in much more danger of being poisoned in those dreadful, chic places you always go to, where they always have the face clean. Mais, mon Dieu, les fesses." He grinned. "Face-moi confiance. Why would I want to poison you? Then I would have no job, and I have only just found out that I want to live." He and Guillaume, Giovanni still smiling, exchanged a look which I would not have been able to read even if I had dared to try, and Jacques, pushing all of us before him as though we were his chickens, said with that grin, "We can't stand here in the cold and argue. If we can't eat inside, we can drink. Alcohol kills all microbes." And Guillaume brightened suddenly. He was really remarkable, as though he carried, hidden somewhere on his person, a needle filled with vitamins, which automatically, at the blackening hour, discharged itself into his veins. "Il y a les jeunes de dawn," he said, and we went in. Indeed, there were young people, half a dozen at the zinc counter before glasses of red and white wine, along with others not young at all. A pockmarked boy and a very rough-looking girl were playing the pinball machine near the window. There were a few people sitting at the tables in the back, served by an astonishingly clean-looking waiter. In the gloom, the dirty walls, the sawdust-covered floor, his white jacket gleamed like snow. Behind these tables one caught a glimpse of the kitchen and the surly, obese cook. He lumbered about like one of those overloaded trucks outside, wearing one of those high, white hats, and with a dead cigar stuck between his lips. Behind the counter sat one of those absolutely inimitable and indomitable ladies, produced only in the city of Paris, but produced there in great numbers, who would be as outrageous and unsettling in any other city as a mermaid on a mountaintop. All over Paris they sit behind their counters like a mother bird in a nest and brood over the cash register as though it were an egg. Nothing occurring under the circle of heaven where they sit escapes their eye. If they have ever been surprised by anything, it was only in a dream they long ago ceased having. They are neither ill nor good-natured, though they have their days and styles, and they know, in the way, apparently, that other people know when they have to go to the bathroom, everything about everyone who enters their domain. Though some are white-haired and some not, some fat, some thin, some grandmothers and some but lately virgins, they all have exactly the same shrewd, vacant, all-registering eye. It is difficult to believe that they ever cried for milk or looked at the sun. It seems they must have come into the world hungry for banknotes, and squinting helplessly, unable to focus their eyes until they came to rest on a cash register. This one's hair is black and gray, and she has a face which comes from Brittany. And she, like almost everyone else standing at the bar, knows Giovanni and, after her fashion, likes him. She has a big, deep bosom and she clasps Giovanni to it, and a big, deep voice. "Ah, mon pote," she cries. "Tu es revenu. You have come back at last. Salad, now that you are rich and have found rich friends, you never come to see us anymore. Canale," and she beams at us, the rich friends, with a friendliness deliciously, deliberately vague. She would have no trouble reconstructing every instant of our biographies from the moment we were born until this morning. She knows exactly who is rich and how rich, and she knows it isn't me. For this reason, perhaps, there was a click of speculation infinitesimally double behind her eyes when she looked at me. In a moment, however, she knows that she will understand it all. "You know how it is," says Giovanni, extricating himself and throwing back his hair. Asterisk when you work. When you become serious, you have no time to play. "Tiens," says she with mockery. "Sans blog." "But I assure you," says Giovanni, "even when you are a young man like me, you get very tired." She laughs. "And you go to sleep early." She laughs again. "And alone," says Giovanni, as though this proved everything, and she clicks her teeth in sympathy and laughs again. "And now," she says, "are you coming or going? Have you come for breakfast or have you come for a nightcap? Nom de Dieu, you do not look very serious. I believe you need a drink." "Bien, sir," says someone at the bar. After such hard work, he needs a bottle of white wine, and perhaps a few dozen oysters. Everybody laughs. Everybody, without seeming to, is looking at us, and I am beginning to feel like part of a traveling circus. Everybody also seems very proud of Giovanni. Giovanni turns to the voice at the bar. "An excellent idea, friend," he says, "and exactly what I had in mind." Now he turns to us. "Two have not met my friends," he says, looking at me, then at the woman. "This is Monsieur Guillaume," he tells her, and with the most subtle flattening of his voice, "my patron. He can tell you if I am serious." "Ah," she dares to say, "but I cannot tell if he is," and covers this daring with a laugh. Guillaume, raising his eyes with difficulty from the young men at the bar, stretches out his hand and smiles. "But you are right, madam," he says. "He is so much more serious than I am that I fear he will own my bar one day. He will when lions fly," she is thinking, but professes herself enchanted by him and shakes his hand with energy. "And Monsieur Jacques," says Giovanni, "one of our finest customers." "Enchanté, madame," says Jacques with his most dazzling smile, of which she, in responding, produces the most artless parody. "And this is Monsieur l'Américain," says Giovanni, "otherwise known as Monsieur David, Madame Clotilde," and he stands back slightly. Something is burning in his eyes and it lights up all his face. It is joy and pride. "Je suis ravi, monsieur," she tells me and looks at me and shakes my hand and smiles. I am smiling too, I scarcely know why. Everything in me is jumping up and down. Giovanni carelessly puts an arm around my shoulder. "What have you got good to eat?" he cried. "We are hungry." "But we must have a drink first," cried Jacques. "But we can drink sitting down," said Giovanni. "No, no," said Guillaume, to whom leaving the bar at the moment would have seemed like being driven from the promised land. "Let us first have a drink, here at the bar with Madame." Guillaume's suggestion had the effect, but subtly, as though a wind had blown over everything or a light been imperceptibly intensified, of creating among the people at the bar a troupe who would now play various roles in a play they knew very well. Madame Clotilde would demur, as, indeed, she instantly did, but only for a moment. Then she would accept it would be something expensive. It turned out to be champagne. She would sip it, making the most non-committal conversation, so that she could vanish out of it a split second before Guillaume had established contact with one of the boys at the bar. As for the boys at the bar, they were each invisibly preening, having already calculated how much money he and his copine would need for the next few days, having already appraised Guillaume to within a decimal of that figure, and having already estimated how long Guillaume as a fountainhead would last, and also how long they would be able to endure him. The only question left was whether they would be Vash with him or Sheik, but they knew that they would probably be Vash. There was also Jacques, who might turn out to be a bonus or merely a consolation prize. There was me, of course, another matter altogether, innocent of apartments, soft beds, or food, a candidate, therefore, for affection, but, as Giovanni's mome, out of honorable reach. Their only means, practically at least, of conveying their affection for Giovanni and me was to relieve us of these two old men, so that there was added, to the roles they were about to play, a certain jolly aura of conviction and, to self-interest, an altruistic glow. I ordered black coffee and a cognac, a large one. Giovanni was far from me, drinking mark between an old man, who looked like a receptacle of all the world's dirt and disease, and a young boy, a redhead, who would look like that man one day, if one could read, in the dullness of his eye, anything so real as a future. Now, however, he had something of a horse's dreadful beauty. Some suggestion, too, of the storm trooper. Covertly, he was watching Guillaume. He knew that both Guillaume and Jacques were watching him. Guillaume chatted, meanwhile, with Madame Clotilde. They were agreeing that business was awful, that all standards had been debased by the nouveau riche, and that the country needed de Gaulle. Luckily, they had both had this conversation so many times before that it ran, so to speak, all by itself, demanding of them nothing in the way of concentration. Jacques would shortly offer one of the boys a drink, but, for the moment, he wished to play uncle to me. "How do you feel?" he asked me. "This is a very important day for you." "I feel fine," I said. "How do you feel?" "Like a man," he said, "who has seen a vision." "Yes," I said. "Tell me about this vision." "I am not joking," he said. "I am talking about you. You were the vision. You should have seen yourself tonight. You should see yourself now." I looked at him and said nothing. "You are how old?" 26 or 7. "I am nearly twice that, and let me tell you, you are lucky. You are lucky that what is happening to you now is happening now and not when you are 40 or something like that, when there would be no hope for you and you would simply be destroyed." "What is happening to me?" I asked. I had meant to sound sardonic, but I did not sound sardonic at all. He did not answer this, but sighed, looking briefly in the direction of the redhead. Then he turned to me. "Are you going to write to Hella?" "I very often do," I said. "I suppose I will again." "That does not answer my question." "Oh, I was under the impression that you had asked me if I was going to write to Hua." "Well, let's put it another way. Are you going to write to Hella about this night and this morning?" "I really don't see what there is to write about. But what's it to you if I do or I don't?" He gave me a look full of a certain despair which I had not, till that moment, known was in him, frightened me. "It's not," he said, "what it is to me. It's what it is to you, and to her, and to that poor boy yonder who doesn't know that when he looks at you the way he does. He is simply putting his head in the lion's mouth. Are you going to treat them as you've treated me? You? What have you to do with all this? How have I treated you?" "You have been very unfair to me," he said. "You have been very dishonest." This time I did sound sardonic. "I suppose you mean that I would have been fair. I would have been honest if I had, you could have been fair to me by despising me a little less. I'm sorry, but I think, since you bring it up, that a lot of your life is despicable." "I could say the same about yours," said Jacques. "There are so many ways of being despicable it quite makes one's head spin. But the way to be really despicable is to be contemptuous of other people's pain. You ought to have some apprehension that the man you see before you was once even younger than you are now and arrived at his present wretchedness by imperceptible degrees." There was silence for a moment, threatened, from a distance, by that laugh of Giovanni's. "Tell me," I said at last, "is there really no other way for you but this? To kneel down forever before an army of boys for just 5 dirty minutes in the dark?" "Think," said Jacques, "of the men who have kneeled before you while you thought of something else and pretended that nothing was happening down there in the dark between your legs." I stared at the amber cognac and at the wet rings on the metal. Deep below, trapped in the metal, the outline of my own face looked upward hopelessly at me. "You think," he persisted, that my life is shameful because my encounters are, and they are. But you should ask yourself why they are. Why are they shameful? I asked him. Because there is no affection in them and no joy. It's like putting an electric plug in a dead socket. Touch but no contact. All touch, but no contact and no light. I asked him, why? That you must ask yourself, he told me. And perhaps one day, this morning will not be ashes in your mouth. I looked over at Giovanni, who now had one arm around the ruined-looking girl, who could have once been very beautiful but who never would be now. Girl who could have once been very beautiful but who never would be now. Jacques followed my look. He is very fond of you, he said, already. But this doesn't make you happy or proud, as it should. It makes you frightened and ashamed. Why? I don't understand him, I said at last. I don't know what his friendship means. I don't know what he means by friendship. Jacques laughed. You don't know what he means by friendship, but you have the feeling it may not be safe. You are afraid it may change you. What kind of friendship have you had? I said nothing. Or, for that matter, he continued. What kind of love affairs? I was silent for so long that he teased me, saying, come out, wherever you are. And I grinned, feeling chilled. Love him, said Jacques with vehemence. Love him and let him love you. Do you think anything else under heaven really matters? And how long at the best can it last? Since you are both men and still have everywhere to go? Only 5 minutes, I assure you, only 5 minutes, and most of that, hellish, in the dark. And if you think of them as dirty, then they will be dirty. They will be dirty because you will be giving nothing. You will be despising your flesh and his. But you can make your time together anything but dirty. You can give each other something which will make both of you better, forever, if you will not be ashamed, if you will only not play it safe. He paused, watching me, and then looked down to his cognac. You play it safe long enough, he said in a different tone, and you'll end up trapped in your own dirty body, forever and forever and forever, like me. And he finished his cognac, ringing his glass slightly on the bar to attract the attention of Madame Clotilde. She came at once, beaming, and in that moment Guillaume dared to smile at the redhead. Madame. Clotilde poured Jacques a fresh cognac and looked questioningly at me, the bottle poised over my half-full glass. I hesitated. "Et pourquoi pas?" she asked with a smile. So I finished my glass and she filled it. Then, for the briefest of seconds, she glanced at Guillaume, who cried, "Atlurukin la! What's the redhead drinking, Madame?" Clotilde turned with the air of an actress about to deliver the severely restrained last lines of an exhausting and mighty part. "On t'offre, Pierre," she said, majestically. "What will you have?" Holding slightly aloft meanwhile the bottle containing the most expensive cognac in the house. "Je prendrai un petit cognac," Pierre mumbled after a moment, and oddly enough, he blushed, which made him, in the light of the pale, just rising sun, resemble a freshly fallen angel. "Madame." Clotilde filled Pierre's glass and, amid a beautifully resolving tension, as of slowly dimming lights, replaced the bottle on the shelf and walked back to the cash register. Offstage, in effect, into the wings, where she began to recover herself by finishing the last of the champagne. She sighed and sipped and looked outward contentedly into the slowly rising morning. Guillaume had murmured a "Je m'excuse un instant, madame," and now passed behind us on his way to the redhead. I smiled. "Things my father never told me." "Somebody," said Jacques, "your father or mine, should have told us that not many people have ever died of love, but multitudes have perished, and are perishing every hour, and in the oddest places for the lack of it. And then, here comes your baby. Sois sage. Sois chic." He moved slightly away and began talking to the boy next to him. And here my baby came indeed, through all that sunlight, his face flushed and his hair flying, his eyes, unbelievably, like morning stars. "It was not very nice of me to go off for so long," he said. "I hope you have not been too bored." "You certainly haven't been," I told him. "You look like a kid about 5 years old waking up on Christmas morning." This delighted, even flattered him, as I could see from the way he now humorously pursed his lips. I am sure I cannot look like that, he said. I was always disappointed on Christmas morning. Well, I mean very early on Christmas morning, before you saw what was under the tree. But his eyes have somehow made of my last statement a double entendre, and we are both laughing. Are you hungry? He asked. Perhaps I would be if I were alive and sober. I don't know. Are you? I think we should eat, he said with no conviction whatever, and we began to laugh again. Well, I said, what shall we eat? I scarcely dare suggest white wine and oysters, said Giovanni. Asterisk, but that is really the best thing after such a night. Well, let's do that, I said. While we can still walk to the dining room. I looked beyond him to Guillaume and the redhead. They had apparently found something to talk about. I could not imagine what it was. And Jacques was deep in conversation with the tall, very young, pockmarked boy, whose turtleneck. In conversation with the tall, very young, pockmarked boy, whose turtleneck black sweater made him seem even paler and thinner than he actually was. He had been playing the pinball machine when we came in. His name appeared to be Eve. Are they going to eat now? I asked Giovanni. Perhaps not now, said Giovanni. Trot, they are certainly going to eat. Everyone is very hungry. I took this to refer more to the boys than to our friends, and we passed into the dining room, which was now empty, the waiter nowhere in sight. Madame. Clotilde, I shouted Giovanni. On mange ici non? This shout produced an answering shout from Madame Clotilde and also produced the waiter, whose jacket was less spotless, seen in close-up, than it had seemed from a distance. It also officially announced our presence in the dining room to Jacques and Guillaume and must have definitely increased, in the eyes of the boys they were talking to, a certain tigerish intensity of affection. Well, eat quickly and go, said Giovanni. After all, I have to work tonight. Did you meet Guillaume here? I asked him. He grimaced, looking down. No, that is a long story. He grinned. No, I did not meet him here. I met him, he laughed. In a cinema, we both laughed. C'était un film du Far West, avec Gary Cooper. This seemed terribly funny, too. We kept laughing until the waiter came with our bottle of white wine. Well, said Giovanni, sipping the wine, his eyes damp. After the last gunshot had been fired and all the music came up to celebrate the triumph of goodness and I came up the aisle, I bumped into this man, Guillaume, and I excused myself and walked into the lobby. Then here he came, after me, with a long story about leaving his scarf in my seat because, it appeared, he had been sitting behind me, you understand, with his coat and his scarf on the seat before him, and when I sat down I pulled his scarf down with me. Well, I told him I didn't work for the cinema and I told him what he could do with his scarf, but I did not really get angry because he made me want to laugh. He said that all the people who worked for the cinema were thieves and he was sure that they would keep it if they so much as laid eyes on it, and it was very expensive and a gift from his mother and, oh, I assure you, not even Garbo ever gave such a performance. So I went back and of course there was no scarf there, and when I told him this it seemed he would fall dead right there in the lobby. And by this time, you understand, everybody thought we were together and I didn't know whether to kick him or the people who were looking at us. But he was very well dressed, of course, and I was not, and so I thought, well, we had better get out of this lobby. So we went to a cafe and sat on the terrace, and when he had got over his grief about the scarf and what his mother would say and so on, he asked me to have supper with him. Well, naturally, I said no. I had certainly had enough of him by that time, but the only way I could prevent another scene, right there on the terrace, was to promise to have supper with him a few days later. I did not intend to go, he said with a shy grin, taut when the day came. I had not eaten for a long time and I was very hungry. He looked at me and I saw in his face again something which I have fleetingly seen there during these hours. Under his beauty and his bravado, terror, and a terrible desire to please. Dreadfully, dreadfully moving, and it made me want, in anguish, to reach out and comfort him. Our oysters came and we began to eat. Giovanni sat in the sun, his black hair gathering to itself the yellow glow of the wine and the many dull colors of the oyster where the sun struck it. Well, with his mouth turned down. Dinner was awful, of course, since he can make scenes in his apartment too. But by this time I knew he owned a bar and was a French citizen. I am not, and I had no job and no carte de travail. So I saw that he could be useful if I could only find some way to make him keep his hands off me. I did not, I must say, This with that look at me. Altogether succeed in remaining untouched by him. He has more hands than an octopus and no dignity whatever buff. Grimly throwing down another oyster and refilling our glasses of wine. I do now have a carte de travail and I have a job, which pays very well, he grinned. It appears that I am good for business. For this reason, he leaves me mostly alone. He looked out into the bar. He is really not a man at all, he said, with a sorrow and bewilderment at once childlike and ancient. I do not know what he is horrible, but I will keep my carte de travail. The job is another matter, but... He knocked wood. We have had no trouble now for nearly 3 weeks. But you think that trouble is coming, I said. Oh yes, said Giovanni, with a quick, startled look at me, as if he were wondering if I had understood a word of what he had said. We are certainly going to have a little trouble soon again. Not right away, of course. That is not his style. But he will invent something to be angry at me about. Then we sat in silence for a while, smoking cigarettes, surrounded by oyster shells, and finishing the wine. I was all at once very tired. I looked out into the narrow street, this strange, crooked corner where we sat, which was brazen now with the sunlight and heavy with people. People I would never understand. I ached abruptly, intolerably, with a longing to go home. Not to that hotel in one of the alleys of Paris, where the concierge barred the way with my unpaid bill. But home across the ocean, to things and people I knew and understood. To those things, those places, those people which I would always helplessly, and in whatever bitterness of spirit, love above all else. I had never realized such a sentiment in myself before, and it frightened me. I saw myself, sharply, as a wanderer, an adventurer, rocking through the world, unanchored. I looked at Giovanni's face, which did not help me. He belonged to the strange city, which did not belong to me. I began to see that, while what was happening to me was not so strange as it would have comforted me to believe, yet it was strange beyond belief. It was not really so strange, so unprecedented. Though voices deep within me boomed, for shame I that I should be so abruptly, so hideously entangled with a boy. What was strange was that this was but one tiny aspect of the dreadful human tangle occurring everywhere, without end, forever. Viens, said Giovanni. We rose and walked back into the bar and Giovanni paid our bill. Another bottle of champagne had been opened and Jacques and Guillaume were now really beginning to be drunk. It was going to be ghastly and I wondered if those poor, patient boys were ever going to get anything to eat. Giovanni talked to Guillaume for a moment, agreeing to open up the bar. Jacques was too busy with the pale tall boy to have much time for me. We said good morning and left them. I must go home, I said to Giovanni when we were in the street. I must pay my hotel bill. Giovanni stared. Mais tu es faux, he said mildly. There is certainly no point in going home now, to face an ugly concierge and then go to sleep in that room all by yourself and then wake up later, with a terrible stomach and a sour mouth, wanting to commit suicide. Come with me. We will rise at a civilized hour and have a gentle aperitif somewhere and then a little dinner. It will be much more cheerful like that, he said with a smile. You will see. But I must get my clothes, I said. He took my arm. Bien sûr. But you do not have to get them now. I held back. He stopped. Come. I am sure that I am much prettier than your wallpaper or your concierge. I will smile at you when you wake up. They will not. Ah. I could only say, tu es vache. It is you who are vache, he said. To want to leave me alone in this lonely place when you know that I am far too drunk to reach my home unaided. We laughed together, both caught up in a stinging, teasing sort of game. We reached the Boulevard de Sebastopol. But we will not any longer discuss the painful subject of how you desired to desert Giovanni at so dangerous an hour in the middle of a hostile city. I began to realize that he, too, was nervous. Far down the boulevard a cab meandered toward us, and he put up his hand. I will show you my room, he said. It is perfectly clear that you would have to see it one of these days, anyway. The taxi stopped beside us, and Giovanni, as though he were suddenly afraid that I would really turn and run, pushed me in before him. He got in beside me and told the driver, Nation. The street he lived on was wide, respectable rather than elegant, and massive with fairly recent apartment buildings. The street ended in a small park. His room was in the back, on the ground floor of the last building on this street. We passed the vestibule and the elevator into a short, dark corridor which led to his room. The room was small. I only made out the outlines of clutter and disorder. There was the smell of the alcohol he burned in his stove. He locked the door behind us, and then for a moment, in the gloom, we simply stared at each other with dismay, with relief, and breathing hard. I was trembling. I thought, if I do not open the door at once and get out of here, I am lost. But I knew I could not open the door. I knew it was too late. Soon it was too late to do anything but moan. He pulled me against him, putting himself into my arms as though he were giving me himself to carry, and slowly pulled me down with him to that bed. With everything in me screaming no, yet the some of me sighed yes. Here in the south of France it does not often snow, but snowflakes, in the beginning rather gently and now with more force, have been falling for the last half hour. It falls as though it might quite possibly decide to turn into a blizzard. It has been cold down here this winter, though the people of the region seem to take it as a mark of ill-breeding in a foreigner if he makes any reference to this fact. They themselves, even when their faces are burning in that wind which seems to blow from everywhere at once, and which penetrates everything, are as radiantly cheerful as children at the seashore. Il fait beau bien? Throwing their faces toward the lowering sky in which the celebrated southern sun has not made an appearance in days. I leave the window of the big room and walk through the house. While I am in the kitchen, staring into the mirror, I have decided to shave before all the water turns cold. I hear a knocking at the door. Some vague, wild hope leaps in me for a second, and then I realize that it is only the caretaker from across the road come to make certain that I have not stolen the silver or smashed the dishes, or chopped up the furniture for firewood. And indeed, she rattles the door and I hear her voice out there, cracking, "M'su, m'su, El Americaine." I wonder, with annoyance, why on earth she should sound so worried. But she smiles at once when I open the door, a smile which weds the coquette and the mother. She is quite old and not really French. She came many years ago, when I was a very young girl, sir, from just across the border out of Italy. She seems, like most of the women down here, to have gone into mourning directly the last child moved out of childhood. Hella thought that they were all widows, but it turned out most of them had husbands living yet. These husbands might have been their sons. They sometimes played belloti in the sunshine in a flat field near our house, and their eyes, when they looked at Hella, contained the proud watchfulness of a father and the watchful speculation of a man. I sometimes played billiards with them and drank red wine in the tobacco. But they made me tense, with their ribaldries, their good nature, their fellowship, the life written on their hands and in their faces and in their eyes. They treated me as the son who has but lately been initiated into manhood, but at the same time with great distance, for I did not really belong to any of them, and they also sensed, or I felt they did, something else about me, something which it was no longer worth their while to pursue. This seemed to be in their eyes when I walked with Hella and they passed us on the road, saying very respectfully, "Salut, Monsieur Dame." They might have been the sons of these women in black, come home after a lifetime of storming and conquering the world, home to rest and be scolded and wait for death, home to those breasts, now dry, which had nourished them in their beginnings. Flakes of snow have drifted across the shawl which covers her head, and hang on her eyelashes and on the wisps of black and white hair not covered by the shawl. She is very strong yet, though now a little bent, a little breathless. "Bonsoir, monsieur. Vous n'êtes pas malade?" "No," I say, "I have not been sick. Come in." She comes in, closing the door behind her, and allowing the shawl to fall from her head. I still have my drink in my hand, and she notices this in silence. "Eh bien," she says, "tant mieux, but we have not seen you for several days. You have been staying in the house." And her eyes search my face. I am embarrassed and resentful. Yet it is impossible to rebuff something at once shrewd and gentle in her eyes and voice. "Yes," I say, "the weather has been bad. It is not the middle of August, to be sure," says she. "But you do not have the—" "It is not the middle of August, to be sure," says she. "But you do not have the air of an invalid. It is not good to sit in the house alone. I am leaving in the morning, I say desperately. Did you want to take the inventory? Yes, she says, and produces from one of her pockets the list of household goods I signed upon arrival. It will not be long. Let me start from the back. We start toward the kitchen. On the way, I put my drink down on the night table in my bedroom. It doesn't matter to me if you drink, she says, not turning around. But I leave my drink behind anyway. We walk into the kitchen. The kitchen is suspiciously clean and neat. Where have you been eating? She asks sharply. They tell me at the tobacco you have not been seen for days. Have you been going to town? Yes, I say lamely, sometimes. On foot? She inquires. Because the bus driver, he has not seen you either. All this time she is not looking at me but around the kitchen, checking off the list in her hand with a short, yellow pencil. I can make no answer to her last, sardonic thrust, having forgotten that in a small village almost every move is made under the village's collective eye and ear. She looks briefly in the bathroom. I'm going to clean that tonight, I say. I should hope so, she says. Everything was clean when you moved in. We walk back through the kitchen. She has failed to notice that 2 glasses are missing, broken by me, and I have not the energy to tell her. I will leave some money in the cupboard. She turns on the light in the guest room. My dirty clothes are lying all over. Those go with me, I say, trying to smile. You could have come just across the road, she says. I would have been glad to give you something to eat. A little soup, something nourishing. I cook every day for my husband. What difference does one more make? This touches me, but I do not know how to indicate it, and I cannot say, of course, that eating with her and her husband would have stretched my nerves to the breaking point. She is examining a decorative pillow. Are you going to join your fiancé? She asks. I know I ought to lie, but somehow I cannot. I am afraid of her eyes. I wish now that I had my drink with me. No, I say flatly. She has gone to America. Tiens, she says. And you? Do you stay in France? She looks directly at me. For a while, I say. I am beginning to sweat. It has come to me that this woman, a peasant from Italy, must resemble, in so many ways, the mother of Giovanni. I keep trying not to hear her howls of anguish. I keep trying not to see in her eyes what would surely be there if she knew that her son would be dead by morning, if she knew what I had done to her son. But, of course, she is not Giovanni's mother. It is not good, she says. It is not right for a young man like you to be sitting alone in a great big house with no woman. She looks, for a moment, very sad, starts to say something more and thinks better of it. I know she wants to say something about Hella, whom neither she nor any of the other women here had liked. But she turns out the light in the guest room and we go into the big bedroom, the master bedroom, which Hella and I had used, not the one in which I have left my drink. This too is very clean and orderly. She looks about the room and looks at me and smiles. You have not been using this room lately, she says. I feel myself blushing painfully. She laughs. But you will be happy again, she says. You must go and find yourself another woman, a good woman, and get married and have babies. Yes, that is what you ought to do, she says, as though I had contradicted her. And before I can say anything, where is your maman? She is dead. Ah, she clicks her teeth in sympathy. That is sad. And your papa, is he dead too? No, he is in America. Povera bambino. She looks at my face. I am really helpless in front of her, and if she does not leave soon, she will reduce me to tears or curses. But you do not have the intention of just wandering through the world like a sailor? I am sure that would make your mother very unhappy. You will make a home someday? Yes, surely. Someday. She puts her strong hand on my arm. Even if your maman, she is dead, that is very sad. Your papa will be very happy to see bambinos from you. She pauses, her black eyes soften. She is looking at me, but she is looking beyond me, too. We had 3 sons. 2 of them were killed in the war. In the war, too, we lost all our money. It is sad, is it not, To have worked so hard all one's life in order to have a little peace in one's old age and then to have it all taken away? Almost killed my husband. He has never been the same since. Then I see that her eyes are not merely shrewd. They are also bitter and very sad. She shrugs her shoulders. All what can one do? It is better not to think about it. Then she smiles. But our last son, he lives in the north. He came to see us 2 years ago, and he brought with him his little boy. His little boy, he was only 4 years old then. He was so beautiful. Mario, he is called. She gestures. It is my husband's name. They stayed about 10 days and we felt young again. She smiles again. Carrot, especially my husband. And she stands there a moment with this smile on her face. Then she asks, abruptly, do you pray? I wonder if I can stand this another moment. Asterisk no. I stammer. Tiamo. Not often. But you are a believer? I smile. It is not even a patronizing smile, though perhaps I wish it could be. Yes. But I wonder what my smile could have looked like. It did not reassure her. Two must pray, she says very soberly. I assure you, even just a little prayer from time to time. Light a little candle. If it were not for the prayers of the blessed saints, one could not live in this world at all. I speak to you, she says, drawing herself up slightly, as though I were your mammon. Do not be offended. But I am not offended. You are very nice. You are very nice to speak to me this way. She smiles a satisfied smile. Men, not just babies like you, but old men too. They always need a woman to tell them the truth. Les hommes, alles sont impossibles. And she smiles, and forces me to smile at the cunning of this universal joke, and turns out the light in the master bedroom. We go down the hall again, thank heaven, to my drink. This bedroom, of course, is quite untidy. The light burning, my bathrobe, books, dirty socks, and a couple of dirty glasses, and a coffee cup half full of stale coffee, lying around all over the place, and the sheets on the bed a tangled mess. I'll fix this up before morning, I say. Bien, sir, she sighs. Two really must take my advice, monsieur, and get married. At this suddenly we both laugh. Then I finish my drink. The inventory is almost done. We go into the last room, the big room where the bottle is, before the window. She looks at the bottle, then at me. But you will be drunk by morning, she says. Oh no, I'm taking the bottle with me. It is quite clear that she knows this is not true, but she shrugs her shoulders. Again. Then she becomes, by the act of wrapping the shawl around her head, very formal, even a little shy. Now that I see she is about to leave, I wish I could think of something to make her stay. When she has gone back across the road, the night will be blacker and longer than ever. I have something to say to her, but of course it will never be said. I feel that I want to be forgiven. I want her to forgive me, but I do not know how to state my crime. My crime, in some odd way, is in being a man, and she knows all about this already. It is terrible how naked she makes me feel, like a half-grown boy, naked before his mother. She puts out her hand. I take it awkwardly. Bon voyage, monsieur. I hope that you were happy while you were here and that, perhaps, one day, you will visit us again. She is smiling and her eyes are kind, but now the smile is purely social. It is the graceful termination of a business deal. Thank you, I say. Perhaps I will be back next year. She releases my hand and we walk to the door. Oh, she says at the door. Please do not wake me up in the morning. Put the keys in my mailbox. I do not anymore have any reason to get up so early. Surely. I smile and open the door. Good night, madam. Bonsoir, monsieur. Adieu. She steps out into the darkness. But there is a light coming from my house and from her house across the road. The town lights glimmer beneath us and I hear, briefly, the sea again. She walks a little away from me and turns. Souvenez-vous, she tells me. One must make a little prayer from time to time, and I close the door. She has made me realize that I have much to do before morning. I decide to clean the bathroom before I allow myself another drink. And I begin to do this, first scrubbing out the tub, then running water into the pail to mop the floor. The bathroom is tiny and square, with one frosted window. It reminds me of that claustrophobic room in Paris. Giovanni had had great plans for remodeling the room, and there was a time when he had actually begun to do this, when we lived with plaster all over everything and bricks piled on the floor. We took packages of bricks out of the house at night and left them in the streets. I suppose they will come for him early in the morning, perhaps just before dawn, so that the last thing Giovanni will ever see will be that gray, lightless sky over Paris, beneath which we stumbled homeward together so many desperate and drunken mornings. Chapter 1. I remember that life in that room seemed to be occurring beneath the sea. Time flowed past indifferently above us. Hours and days had no meaning. In the beginning, our life together held a joy and amazement which was newborn every day. Beneath the joy, of course, was anguish, and beneath the amazement was fear. But they did not work themselves to the beginning until our high beginning was aloes on our tongues. By then anguish and fear had become the surface on which we slipped and slid, losing balance, dignity, and pride. Giovanni's face, which I had memorized so many mornings, noons, and nights, hardened before my eyes, began to give in secret places, began to crack. The light in the eyes became a glitter. The wide and beautiful brow began to suggest the skull beneath. The sensual lips turned inward, busy with the sorrow overflowing from his heart. It became a stranger's face, or it made me so guilty to look on him that I wished it were a stranger's face. Not all my memorizing had prepared me for the metamorphosis which my memorizing had helped to bring about. Our day began before daybreak, when I drifted over to Guillaume's bar in time for a pre-closing drink. Sometimes, when Guillaume had closed the bar to the public, a few friends and Giovanni and myself stayed behind for breakfast and music. Sometimes Jacques was there. From the time of our meeting with Giovanni, he seemed to come out more and more. If we had breakfast with Guillaume, we usually left around 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes, when Jacques was there, he offered to drive us home in the car which he had suddenly and inexplicably bought, but we almost always walked the long way home along the river. Spring was approaching Paris. Walking up and down this house tonight, I see again the river, the cobblestoned quays, the bridges. Low boats passed beneath the bridges, and on those boats one sometimes saw women hanging washing out to dry. Sometimes we saw a young man in a canoe, energetically rowing, looking rather helpless, and also rather silly. There were yachts tied up along the banks from time to time, and houseboats and barges. We passed the firehouse so often on our way home that the firemen got to know us. When winter came again and Giovanni found himself in hiding in one of these barges, it was a fireman who, seeing him crawl back into hiding with a loaf of bread one night, tipped off the police. The trees grew green those mornings, the river dropped, and the brown. The trees grew green those mornings, the river dropped, and the brown winter smoke dropped downward out of it, and fishermen appeared. Giovanni was right about the fishermen. They certainly never seemed to catch anything, but it gave them something to do. Along the quays the bookstalls seemed to become almost festive, awaiting the weather which would allow the passerby to leaf idly through the dog-eared books, and which would inform the jurist with a passionate desire to carry off to the United States, or Denmark, more colored prints than he could afford, or, when he got home, know what to do with. Also, the girls appeared on their bicycles, along with boys similarly equipped, and we sometimes saw them along the river as the light began to fade, their bicycles put away until the morrow. This was after Giovanni had lost his job, and we walked around in the evenings. Those evenings were bitter. Giovanni knew that I was going to leave him, but he did not dare accuse me for fear of being corroborated. I did not dare to tell him. Hella was on her way back from Spain, and my father had agreed to send me money, which I was not going to use to help Giovanni, who had done so much to help me. I was going to use it to escape his room. Every morning the sky and the sun seemed to be a little higher, and the river stretched before us with a greater haze of promise. Every day the bookstall keepers seemed to have taken off another garment, so that the shape of their bodies appeared to be undergoing a most striking and continual metamorphosis. One began to wonder what the final shape would be. It was observable, through open windows on the quays and side streets, that hoteliers had called in painters to paint the rooms. The women in the dairies had taken off their blue sweaters and rolled up the sleeves of their dresses, so that one saw their powerful arms. The bread seemed warmer and fresher in the bakeries. The small school children had taken off their capes and their knees were no longer scarlet with the cold. There seemed to be more chatter, in that curiously measured and vehement language, which sometimes reminds me of stiffening egg white and sometimes of stringed instruments but always of the underside and aftermath of passion. But we did not often have breakfast in Guillaume's bar because Guillaume did not like me. Usually I simply waited around, as inconspicuously as possible, until Giovanni had finished cleaning up the bar and had changed his clothes. Then we said good night and left. The habitués had evolved toward us a curious attitude, composed of an unpleasant maternalism and envy and disguised dislike. They could not, somehow, speak to us as they spoke to one another, and they resented the strain we imposed on them of speaking in any other way. And it made them furious that the dead center of their lives was, in this instance, none of their business. It made them feel their poverty again through the narcotics of chatter and dreams of conquest and mutual contempt. Wherever we ate breakfast and wherever we walked, when we got home we were always too tired to sleep right away. We made coffee and sometimes drank cognac with it. We sat on the bed and talked and smoked. We seemed to have a great deal to tell, or Giovanni did. Even at my most candid, even when I tried hardest to give myself to him as he gave himself to me, I was holding something back. I did not, for example, really tell him about Hella until I had been living in the room a month. I told him about her then because her letters had begun to sound as though she would be coming back to Paris very soon. "What is she doing, wandering around through Spain alone?" asked Giovanni. "She likes to travel," I said. "Oh," said Giovanni. "Nobody likes to travel, especially not women. There must be some other reason." He raised his eyebrows suggestively. "Perhaps she has a Spanish lover and is afraid to tell you? Perhaps she is with a torero. Perhaps she is," I thought. "But she wouldn't be afraid to tell me." Giovanni laughed. "I do not understand Americans at all," he said. "I don't see that there's anything very hard to understand. We aren't married, you know." "But she is your mistress, no?" asked Giovanni. "Yes. And she is still your mistress?" I stared at him. "Of course," I said. "Well then," said Giovanni, "I do not understand what she is doing in Spain while you are in Paris." Another thought struck him. "How old is she?" "She's 2 years younger than I am." I watched him. "What's that got to do with it? Is she married?" "I mean to somebody else, naturally." I laughed. He laughed too. "Of course not." "Well, I thought she might be an older woman," said Giovanni, "with a husband somewhere, and perhaps she had to go away with him from time to time in order to be able to continue her affair with you. That would be a nice arrangement. Those women are sometimes very interesting and they usually have a little money. If that woman was in Spain, she would bring back a wonderful gift for you. But a young girl bouncing around in a foreign country by herself, I do not like that at all. You should find another mistress." It all seemed very funny. I could not stop laughing. "Do you have a mistress?" I asked him. "Not now," he said. "But perhaps I will again one day." He half frowned, half smiled. "I don't seem to be very interested in women right now. I don't know why. I used to be. Perhaps I will be again." He shrugged. "Perhaps it is because women are just a little more trouble than I can afford right now." Petit pouce, he stopped. I wanted to say that it seemed to me that he had taken a most peculiar road out of his trouble, but I only said, after a moment, cautiously, "You don't seem to have a very high opinion of women." "Oh, women! There is no need, thank heaven, to have an opinion about women. Women are like water. They are tempting like that, and they can be that treacherous, and they can seem to be that bottomless, you know? And they can be that shallow, and that dirty." He stopped. "I perhaps don't like women very much. That's true. That hasn't stopped me from making love to many and loving one or two. But most of the time I made love only with the body. That can make one very lonely," I said. I had not expected to say it. He had not expected to hear it. He looked at me and reached out and yooshed me on the cheek. "Yes," he said. "Then, I am not trying to be méchant when I talk about women. I respect women very much for their inside life, which is not like the life of a man. Women don't seem to like that idea," I said. "Oh, well," said Giovanni. These absurd women running around today, full of ideas and nonsense, and thinking themselves equal to men. Kel wriggled. They need to be beaten half to death so that they can find out who rules the world. I laughed. Did the women you knew like to get beaten? He smiled. I don't know if they liked it, but a beating never made them go away. We both laughed. They were not, anyway, like that silly little girl of yours, wandering all over Spain and sending postcards back to Paris. What does she think she is doing? Does she want you or does she not want you? She went to Spain, I said, to find out. Giovanni opened his eyes wide. He was indignant. To Spain? Why not to China? What is she doing, testing all the Spaniards and comparing them with you? I was a little annoyed. You don't understand, I said. She is a very intelligent, very complex girl. She wanted to go away and think. What is there to think about? She sounds rather silly, I must say. She just... What is there to think about? She sounds rather silly, I must say. She just can't make up her mind what bed to sleep in. She wants to eat her cake and she wants to have it all. If she were in Paris now, I said abruptly, then I would not be in this room with you. You would possibly not be living here, he conceded. Taught we would certainly be seeing each other. Why not? Why not? Suppose she found out. Found out? Found out what? Oh, stop it, I said. You know what there is to find out. He looked at me very soberly. She sounds more and more impossible. This little girl of yours. What does she do, follow you everywhere? Or will she hire detectives to sleep under our bed? And what business is it of hers? Anyway, you can't possibly be serious, I said. I certainly can be, he retorted. And I am. You are the incomprehensible one. He groaned and poured more coffee and picked up our cognac from the floor. Chez toi, everything sounds extremely feverish and complicated. Like one of those English murder mysteries. To find out, you keep saying as though we were accomplices in a crime. We have not committed any crime. He poured the cognac. It's just that she'll be terribly hurt if she does find out. That's all. People have very dirty words for this situation. I stopped. His face suggested that my reasoning was flimsy. I added defensively, besides, it is a crime in my country and after all, I didn't grow up here, I grew up there. If dirty words frighten you, said Giovanni, I really do not know how you have managed to live so long. People are full of dirty words. The only time they do not use them, most people I mean, is when they are describing something dirty. He paused and we watched each other. In spite of what he was saying, he looked rather frightened himself. If your countrymen think that privacy is a crime, so much the worse for your country. And as for this girl of yours, are you always at her side when she is here? I mean all day, every day? You go out sometimes to have a drink alone, no? Maybe you sometimes take a walk without her, to think, as you say. The Americans seem to do a great deal of thinking. And perhaps while you are thinking and having that drink, you look at another girl who passes, no? Maybe you even look up at that sky and feel your own blood in you? Or does everything stop when Hella comes? No drinks alone, no looks at other girls, no sky? Answer me. I've told you already that we're not married. But I don't seem to be able to make you understand anything at all this morning. Make you understand anything at all this morning. But anyway, when Hella is here you do sometimes see other people without Hella? Of course. And does she make you tell her everything you have done while you were not with her? I sighed. I had lost control of the conversation somewhere along the line and I simply wanted it to end. I drank my cognac too fast and it burned my throat. Of course not. Well, you are a very charming and good-looking and civilized boy and, unless you are impotent, I do not see what she has to complain about or what you have to worry about. To arrange, mon cher, la vie pratique, is very simple. It only has to be done. He reflected. Sometimes things go wrong, I agree. Then you have to arrange it another way. But it is certainly not the English melodrama you make it. Why, that way, life would simply be unbearable. He poured more cognac and grinned at me, as though he had solved all my problems.